At 7 a.m., my unemployed sister showed up at the apartment I was renting from my parents and said, "I'm moving in." Then my mom added, "We're doubling your rent to cover our expenses." When I told them I'd just move out, they laughed. So I took every piece of furniture. My name is Allison, and at 28 I truly believed I had it all figured out. I was a social media marketer at a booming agency called Digital Pulse, loving the city views from my desk and crushing it with our biggest client, a national fitness chain. My boss had even hinted at a big promotion, a 15% salary bump, if this campaign went well. And it was going well. My apartment? Oh, it was my absolute haven. A one-bedroom place I rented from my parents at a fantastic below-market rate, a blessing, I thought. I'd spent 5 years pouring my heart into it, every single item telling a story, a carefully chosen piece of my life. That plush sectional I'd paid off over months, the coffee table I painstakingly refinished, my Vitamix blender, even my fancy espresso machine. These weren't just things, they were milestones, symbols of my independence. I was meticulously saving 20% of every paycheck, dreaming of my own down payment in about 3 years. I was literally browsing real estate listings, already picking out neighborhoods. My future felt solid, tangible. But my family dynamic? That was always complicated. Especially with my sister Stephanie, 3 years younger. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While I worked multiple jobs through college to avoid debt, Stephanie breezed through an expensive private university, changing majors 3 times, tuition fully covered. When she needed a car, they bought it. When I needed a car, I got a loan. When she lost a job, she moved back home rent-free. When I got laid off years ago, I was offered a loan with interest. Don't misunderstand, I loved my family, truly. But I'd long accepted there were different rulebooks for Steph and me. So I built my own life, fiercely independent, never relying on them for anything. That apartment, their below market rate, felt like a rare win for me, a little piece of family benefit without sacrificing my freedom. Rising action, the warning signs, looking back. The warning signs were flashing like a faulty neon sign. 2 weeks before everything imploded, Stephanie texted me out of the blue. Highly unusual for us. Then my mom called, casually mentioning Steph and her boyfriend broke up, and she'd quit her sales associate job. And then came the line that chilled me to my core. "Your sister is going through such a difficult time right now. Family needs to stick together." I nodded sympathetically on the phone, oblivious that those words were actually a declaration of war on my peace. The night before, I was blissfully scrolling Pinterest, planning a kitchen backsplash project for the summer. I had no idea that within 24 hours, all my plans, my hard-won peace, would be utterly shattered. Inciting incident: the arrival. The pounding started at exactly 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because my alarm was set for 7:30, and this insistent knocking ripped me from sleep a full half-hour early. Disoriented, hair everywhere, I stumbled to the door, expecting a package, maybe a maintenance emergency. When I swung it open, there stood Stephanie, 2 huge suitcases, a duffel bag, and her designer purse piled around her. Her usually perfect hair was in a messy ponytail, eyes puffy from crying or lack of sleep. "Hey sis," she chirped, a forced cheerfulness that didn't reach her eyes. "Surprise. I'll be staying with you for a while." I just froze. My brain short-circuited. "Stephanie, what are you talking about? What are you doing here so early?" She just pushed past me, rolling her luggage into my living room. "Mark and I broke up. He cheated on me, can you believe it? And then my boss was being totally unreasonable about me needing time off, so I had to quit. I just can't deal with toxic work environments on top of heartbreak. You know?" I slowly closed the door, trying to get my thoughts in order. "I'm sorry about Mark and your job, that's genuinely tough. But Steph, this is a one-bedroom apartment. There's no space. Why didn't you go to Mom and Dad's?" She flopped dramatically onto my plush sofa. "Their house is being renovated, remember? The guest room is torn apart. Besides, Dad snores so loud and Mom's on this health kick, only kale and quinoa in the house. I'd go crazy there." She looked around, appreciating my sanctuary. "This place is perfect. You've always had great taste, Ally." I winced. Ally, a childhood nickname I'd outgrown years ago. "Stephanie, I work from home 2 days a week. I need my space. This really won't work." The parental intervention. Just then my phone rang. Mom. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Allison, your sister is there, right? She didn't wait for an answer. I want you to make her feel welcome. She's going through a very difficult time and needs family support right now. Mom, I understand, but my apartment is too small. Maybe we could help her find a place? Or she could stay with Jessica. I suggested, naming her longtime friend with a spare room. Jessica isn't family, Mom snapped. Family takes care of each other. Allison, your sister needs you. This is not the time to be selfish. I took a deep breath, moving into the kitchen so Stephanie wouldn't overhear. It's not about being selfish, Mom. There is literally no space. I don't have an extra bedroom. She can sleep on the couch. It's temporary until she gets back on her feet. Mom's tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. It was an expectation. How temporary are we talking? I asked, watching Stephanie unpack her toiletries onto my coffee table. As long as she needs, Mom replied vaguely. Now stop being difficult. I raised you better than this. Do I need to get your father involved? The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Dad would take an even harder line, and any protest from me would be labeled ungrateful. I knew this script by heart. Fine, I conceded, the word thick with defeat. She can stay for now, but we need a more permanent solution soon. That's my good girl. Mom instantly warmed. Call me if you need anything. Love you both. I stood there, watching Stephanie happily rearrange my throw pillows and place her framed photos next to mine. A wave of invasion washed over me, but I swallowed it down. The couch pulls out into a bed. I forced a neutral tone. We'll need to put it back during the day so I can work. I have meetings from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Stephanie barely looked up. Actually, I was thinking I'd take the bedroom. The living room gets so much light in the morning, and you know I'm not a morning person. Plus, I have all these clothes that need to be hung up. I stared at her, disbelief rising. Stephanie, this is my apartment. I am not giving up my bedroom. She gave me that look. The one she perfected on our parents for years. A perfect blend of hurt and indignation. Wow, ally. I just lost my boyfriend and my job. I'm at my lowest point, and you can't even make a small sacrifice to help me? The living room is bigger anyway. I held my ground. You can have the couch. That's already a compromise. The standoff might have continued, but my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Be kind to your sister. Remember all the time she was there for you. I couldn't recall these supposed instances, but I knew this wasn't a battle I could win. Not today. Fine, I gritted out. You can use the living room, but we need to establish some ground rules. Her face instantly brightened. You're the best sister ever. This is going to be so fun. Like when we were kids and shared a room. I didn't have the heart to remind her those days were anything but idyllic. As she cheerfully unpacked, I texted Laura. Steph just moved in. No warning, no choice. Send wine and patience. Laura's reply was immediate. Oh no. Nightmare flashbacks to college roommate days. Coming over tonight with emergency supplies. Hang in there. Looking at my sister singing to herself, claiming more and more of my space, I truly wondered how long I could actually hang in there. Escalation cohabitation hell. The first week was pure chaos. While I woke at 7 a.m. for work, Stephanie slept until noon. My once peaceful living room became her personal bedroom, fashion boutique, and makeup studio. During an important client video call, I had to angle my laptop just so, to avoid showing the blanket, makeup, and clothes strewn everywhere. My boss even commented on my unusual background. I mumbled something about redecorating and swore I'd talk to Stephanie that evening. But talking to her was like talking to a brick wall. Look for a job. Dramatic sigh. I'm healing. Clean up. I will, she'd promised, then never did. Grocery bills up? I'm traumatized, I need comfort food. By the end of the week, my carefully stocked fridge was raided. My meal prep containers empty. My expensive coffee beans nearly gone. Even my hidden stash of dark chocolate? Vanished. One evening I found her wrapped in my favorite throw, watching reality TV at full volume. Stephanie, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to talk about house rules. She looked up annoyed. Can it wait till commercial break? No, it cannot. I've been trying to talk to you all week. I sat down, pulling out a notepad with my carefully written guidelines. Quiet hours, shared expenses, personal space. She rolled her eyes. Are you seriously giving me a roommate contract? I'm your sister, not some random person off Craigslist. That's exactly why we need boundaries, I tried to explain. Because we're sisters, things can get complicated if we don't communicate clearly. She actually laughed, then turned back to her show. You've always been so uptight, ally. Just relax. This isn't forever. How long is it then? I pressed. Have you looked for jobs or apartments? She sighed dramatically. Can you stop pressuring me? I told you I'm taking time to process. Besides, Mom and Dad said I could stay here as long as I need to. The realization and betrayal, that was the moment. Something clicked. Wait, I asked, my voice dangerously low. What exactly did Mom and Dad tell you about staying here? She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Just that you had plenty of space, could use the company, and since they own the building, it's basically like staying with family anyway. My blood began to boil. Without another word, I stepped onto my small balcony and called my parents. Dad answered. Dad, did you and Mom tell Stephanie she could move in with me indefinitely, without even asking me first? There was a pause before he responded. Allison, your sister is going through a difficult time. The apartment is plenty big enough for both of you temporarily. We thought you'd want to help family. But it's not temporary, is it? I shot back. She has no plans to look for a job or her own place, and she's not contributing anything. My father's tone hardened. Your mother and I give you a significant discount on rent for that apartment. Many people would be grateful for such an arrangement. The implicit message was clear, chilling. My sanctuary wasn't truly mine. It was a family asset to be reallocated as they saw fit. I am grateful, I said carefully, but I also need to live my life. Stephanie isn't respecting my space or my things. You've always been the responsible one, Allison, he said, his voice softening into that manipulative tone. Stephanie needs that stability right now. Just give her some time to get back on her feet. Be the big sister. By the time I hung up, my frustration had curdled into bitter resignation. It was the same old song and dance. Stephanie's needs always trumping mine. The breaking point, the situation only got worse. Stephanie invited friends over without warning, sometimes while I was on work calls. She borrowed my clothes and returned them stained or stretched out. My water bill doubled from her epic, twice daily, 40-minute showers. Electricity spiked from her endless use of styling tools and electronics. My peaceful mornings were shattered. My evenings impossible. My promotion, once so close, was slipping away. Is everything okay at home? My boss, Diane, asked during our one-on-one. I considered lying but opted for a simplified truth. Family issues. My sister is staying with me temporarily, and it's been an adjustment. She nodded sympathetically. Family can be complicated. Just don't let it affect your work for too long. The Henderson account is too important. That night I found myself staying late at the office, dreading going home. It became a pattern. Anywhere but my own apartment. I canceled plans with friends, too embarrassed by the chaos, too exhausted by the constant tension. One night, after finding she'd used my expensive face serum and emptied the bottle, I just broke down, sobbing in my bathroom. I called Laura, my lifeline through this ordeal. I can't do this anymore. I feel like a guest in my own home. My parents won't listen. Stephanie won't change. I feel trapped. Have you considered looking for another apartment? Laura suggested gently. On such short notice? At current market rates? My parents charge me 30% below market for this place. I can't afford something comparable on my own. Maybe not comparable, Laura acknowledged, but something that is yours, where you make the rules. Is your sanity worth the price difference? Looking around my once peaceful sanctuary, now utterly overtaken, I realized Laura was right. But before I could seriously consider it, things took an even more dramatic turn. The ultimatum. Exactly 1 month after Stephanie moved in, I got a call from my father. His tone was unnervingly formal, almost businesslike. Allison, your mother, and I would like to have a family discussion this evening. It's important both you and Stephanie are present. We'll come by around 7 p.m. Dread coiled in my gut. What's this about, Dad? We'll discuss everything tonight, he replied cryptically, then hung up. I spent the rest of the workday in a fog, my mind racing through possible scenarios. Were they taking Stephanie back? Had they found her a place? Or was it something else entirely? When I got home, Stephanie, for the first time since she arrived, had tidied up the apartment. She seemed unusually quiet, constantly checking her phone. Do you know what this meeting is about? I asked, suspicion growing. She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Not really. Dad just said they wanted to talk to us both. At precisely 7 p.m., Mom arrived with a casserole, Dad with a folder that instantly set off alarms in my head. We sat at my small dining table, the one I'd lovingly restored from a flea market. Mom served, Dad cleared his throat, and opened the folder. Allison, as you know, your sister has been staying with you for the past month. Given that the living arrangement appears to be working out, we need to make some adjustments to your rental agreement. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. What kind of adjustments? He slid a paper across the table. We will need to increase your rent starting next month. The new amount will be double what you are currently paying. I nearly choked. Double? Why would you double my rent? Well, there are 2 people living in the apartment now, Mom chirped, as if that explained everything. That means twice the utilities, twice the wear and tear on the property. But Stephanie isn't paying anything. I pointed out, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. She doesn't have a job. Which is exactly why we need to adjust your rent, Dad explained with that infuriatingly patient tone he used when he thought I was being obtuse. We need to cover the additional expenses Stephanie incurs while she's getting back on her feet. I looked at Stephanie. She was studying her plate intently, a tiny knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She had known. Of course she had known. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to pay double rent to cover Stephanie living here? Even though I didn't invite her, didn't have space for her, and am already dealing with increased costs and disruption to my life. Now Allison, Mom said, her voice taking on the warning tone I knew well from childhood. Stephanie is family. Families support each other during difficult times. Then why is the support always one-directional? I demanded, the years of resentment finally boiling over. Why am I always the one expected to give while Stephanie only takes? My father frowned. That's unfair, Allison. Your sister has had some bad luck recently. Bad luck or bad choices? The words slipped out before I could stop them. The table fell silent. Stephanie's eyes welled with tears on cue, a talent she'd perfected over the years. I can't believe you would say something so cruel. My mother scolded. After everything we've done for you, giving you this beautiful apartment at below market rent for years. I've paid rent faithfully every month. I countered. I've maintained the apartment, improved it. Even this was a business arrangement that benefited both parties. And now the arrangement is changing, my father said firmly. The new rent will be effective from the 1st of next month. That gives you 2 weeks to adjust your budget. I looked down at the paper. Double rent. It would eat up nearly 70% of my income, destroy my savings plan, make it impossible to maintain my current lifestyle. I can't afford this, I said simply. Not on my current salary. Then perhaps you should look for a better paying job, my father suggested. Or take on some freelance work. You're always talking about those side hustles people do nowadays. The sheer casualness of his dismissal, the utter disregard for my financial reality, made something inside me snap. Years of being the responsible one, of watching Stephanie receive endless second chances while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. It all culminated in this moment. Or, I said, my voice steady despite the anger and hurt swirling within me, I could just move out. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then all 3 of them burst into laughter. Move out to where? My mother asked, chuckling. Do you have any idea what rental prices are like right now? You wouldn't find anything close to what you have here, even at the increased rate, my father added confidently. Your whole life is here, Stephanie chimed in. All your stuff, your routine. You wouldn't really leave. Their dismissive laughter felt like a physical slap. They truly believed I was trapped, that I had no choice but to accept whatever terms they dictated. Worse, they thought I lacked the courage to strike out on my own. I'll start looking for a new place tomorrow, I said quietly. My father waved his hand dismissively. Allison, don't be dramatic. Just sign the new agreement, and we can all enjoy this lovely dinner your mother made. I took the pen he offered and held it over the paper for a long moment. Then I set it down and signed. I'll let you know my decision by the end of the week. The rest of dinner was an uncomfortable blur. After they left, Stephanie tried to act like nothing had happened, settling into my sofa, turning on my TV. They're right, you know, she said casually. You wouldn't really move out. This place is too perfect, and you hate change. In that moment, looking at her lounging on my furniture, using my Netflix account, eating my food, speaking with such entitled certainty, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about the rent. This was about respect, boundaries, and standing up for myself in a family dynamic that had been broken for far too long. I went to bed without a word, but I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The plan and execution. The next day, I called in sick for the first time in over a year. As soon as Stephanie left for her daily coffee shop networking, read social media scrolling, I sat down at my dining table with my laptop and a notebook. First, finances. My 20% savings over 3 years? While not enough for a down payment on a home yet, it was a substantial emergency fund. Enough for first and last month's rent, security deposit, and moving expenses if necessary. I calculated my real maximum affordable rent. It was sobering, significantly less than what I currently paid. I'd have to compromise on location, size, or amenities. I immediately reached out to 3 rental agents. 2 were doubtful, but promised to see what they could find. The third, a woman named Vanessa, was more optimistic. The market is tight but not impossible, she assured me. Especially if you're willing to consider neighborhoods a bit further from downtown or slightly smaller spaces. While waiting, I pulled out my current lease agreement. No minimum lease term specified after the initial year. Month to month. 30 days notice. And crucially, no clause about furniture or fixtures. Every single item in that apartment, from the sofa to the Vitamix, was legally mine. My parents had only provided the basic built-in appliances. Still, I wanted to be certain. I texted Laura, whose brother was a real estate attorney. Can you ask Kyle a hypothetical legal question about tenant rights and furniture ownership? Laura called me back 20 minutes later. Kyle says that unless specifically stated in the lease, any furniture you purchase belongs to you, regardless of who owns the building. He also said if your parents try to claim otherwise without documentation, they wouldn't have a case. Armed with this, Vanessa's listings started coming in. 5 potential apartments. All smaller, none with the same charm, but within my budget and available. Immediately. The next day, another personal day, I toured all 5 properties. The first 3 were non-starters. The 4th had potential but was at the absolute top of my budget. The 5th apartment was tiny, just 500 square feet, but recently renovated with new flooring and appliances. It was in a secure building with on-site laundry, and though it was 15 minutes further from my office, it was near a direct bus line. Most importantly, the landlord was willing to work with my tight timeline and offered a slight discount on the security deposit if I could move in within 10 days. I signed the lease on the spot, putting down a deposit with my credit card and scheduling a final walkthrough for the following week. As I left the building, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. I had just upended my entire life in 48 hours. Back home, I meticulously planned the logistics of the move. I created a detailed inventory, separating items into must-take, could sell, could donate. Moving companies were ridiculously expensive on such short notice. So that evening, as Stephanie chatted on the phone, oblivious to my planning, I reached out to my friends. Within hours, I had a volunteer crew of 6 2-pickup trucks and SUV. Laura offered her garage for temporary storage, and Marcus, her contractor boyfriend, volunteered to help disassemble and reassemble furniture. The final piece, timing. My parents were always posting on social media. I checked and confirmed their family reunion was that weekend, 3 hours away. Stephanie, always eager for family attention, had confirmed her attendance. Perfect. Friday evening until Sunday afternoon. I scheduled the move for Saturday. A full day to empty the apartment of everything I owned. This wasn't just escaping an unfair financial situation. This was about finally standing up for myself and changing a family dynamic that had been unhealthy for far too long. The night before my parents' planned ultimatum meeting, where they expected me to sign the new rental agreement, I texted my father. I have made my decision about the apartment. I will discuss it with you when you return from Aunt Jean's on Sunday. He responded immediately, demanding to talk before the weekend. Allison, your mother and I expect you to be reasonable about this. I didn't reply. For once, I wouldn't be following their script. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparations. I arranged for my mail to be forwarded, scheduled utility transfers, and packed essential items discreetly while Stephanie was out. I withdrew cash for last-minute expenses and thanked my past self for maintaining meticulous records of purchases, complete with receipts, stored in a cloud drive. By Friday evening, watching Stephanie pack her overnight bag for the family reunion, I felt an odd sense of calm. She had no idea that when she returned, the apartment, and with it, our relationship would be utterly transformed. Are you sure you won't come? She asked, heading out. Mom says Aunt Jean really wants to see you. I have too much work to catch up on, I replied truthfully, though not for the reasons she assumed. Have a good time. As her rideshare pulled away, I looked around the apartment that had been my home for 5 years. By this time tomorrow it would look very different, and so would my life. Moving day, the liberation. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, as if the universe was approving of my decision. I'd barely slept, a combination of anxiety and adrenaline keeping me alert through the night. By 6 a.m., I was already sorting through the final items in my closet when my phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Operation Independence Day is a go. Troops arriving at 0800 hours. I smiled at her attempt to lighten the mood. By 7:30, I had dismantled my bed frame and was working on emptying my dresser when the first knock came at the door. Laura arrived with coffee and bagels, followed closely by Marcus with his toolkit. Within the hour, the rest of my volunteer crew had assembled. Okay, everyone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Thank you all so much for helping today. The plan is to have everything out by 4 p.m. The big furniture goes first, then boxes, then all the small loose items. We worked with surprising efficiency. Marcus and his friend took charge of disassembling the larger furniture pieces. While Laura and 2 other friends formed a box brigade from the apartment to the vehicles, I moved between groups, directing traffic and making decisions about what went where. By noon, my bedroom was completely empty. The kitchen was half-packed, and the living room furniture was ready for transport. We broke for a quick lunch of delivered sandwiches, everyone sitting on the floor in a circle since all the seating had been removed. How are you feeling? Laura asked quietly while the others chatted. I considered the question carefully. Sad, angry, relieved, proud, all of it at once. She squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing. This is long overdue. The afternoon continued at the same pace. We made 3 trips to my new apartment, carefully arranging furniture and stacking boxes in the much smaller space. My new landlord seemed surprised by the efficiency of our operation, but was impressed by our organization. Most move-ins I see are complete chaos, he commented as he helped hold a door open for us. You folks have a system. By 3:30 we were down to the final items. The apartment that had been so carefully furnished now stood eerily empty. The built-in appliances remained along with the window blinds that had come with the place. Everything else, from the shower curtain to the light bulbs and the lamps, was mine and had been packed away. I did a final walkthrough, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything in cabinets or closets. In the kitchen, I left an envelope on the counter containing my keys, the next month's rent check as required by my 30-day notice, and a brief letter explaining my decision. The letter was factual and unemotional, simply stating that I was exercising my right to terminate the rental agreement with proper notice, and that I had taken only the possessions that belonged to me. As I stood in the empty living room for the last time, Laura put her arm around my shoulders. Ready? She asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. With one final look, I closed and locked the door behind me. The aftermath, the call. The reaction came sooner than I expected. We had just finished the final trip to my new apartment, and were celebrating with pizza and beer when my phone exploded with notifications. First came a series of texts from Stephanie. What the hell, Allison? Where's all the furniture? Where am I supposed to sleep? Mom and Dad are furious. Then came the phone calls. My mother first, then my father, then my mother again. I let them all go to voicemail, needing time to compose myself before the confrontation. When I finally listened to the messages, my mother's voice was nearly hysterical. Allison, what have you done? We came home to find the apartment completely empty. Is this some kind of joke? Call me immediately. My father's message was colder, more threatening. This is completely unacceptable behavior, Allison. That furniture belongs in that apartment. You have violated your lease agreement. Call me back now before I have to take legal action. I waited until my friends had left, thanking them profusely for their help, before I finally called my father back. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger when he answered. Explain yourself, he demanded without preamble. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I decided to move out as I told you I might. I gave proper notice as required by the lease, paid the final month's rent, and took my belongings with me. Your belongings? He sputtered. That furniture belongs in the apartment. Actually, no, I replied calmly. Every piece of furniture in that apartment was purchased by me with my own money. I have receipts for everything if you would like to see them. The lease makes no mention of any furnishings provided by the landlord, which would be you and Mom. There was a moment of stunned silence before he recovered. This isn't about legalities, Allison. This is about your sister having nowhere to sleep tonight. The apartment is completely empty. There are air mattresses at Target for under $50, I suggested. Or she could stay at your house. The guest room renovations must be finished by now, right? Another silence, longer this time. I realized with sudden clarity that there probably had never been any renovations. It had been an excuse, nothing more. Where are you? He finally asked. I have a new apartment, I said, not volunteering the address. It's smaller, but it's mine. This is not over, he warned. Your mother is beside herself. Stephanie is crying. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your family? The guilt trip almost worked. Almost. But I held firm. What I wanted was to be treated with respect, Dad, I replied evenly. What I wanted was for my boundaries to be acknowledged. What I wanted was to not have my kindness taken for granted. So this is revenge? Some kind of childish tantrum because we asked you to help your sister? No, Dad. This is me making a choice about my own life. I paid rent for the final 30 days as required. Stephanie can stay there if she wants, but she'll need to get her own furniture. I heard my mother's voice in the background demanding the phone. There was a rustling sound, and then her tear-filled voice came through. How could you do this to your sister, to us? After everything we've done for you. Mom, I said gently. I've done nothing wrong. I simply moved out of an apartment that was no longer working for me, taking my own possessions with me. But where is Stephanie supposed to sleep? There's nothing left. The same place she would have slept if I had never lived there in the first place. The apartment was unfurnished when I moved in. Remember? That simple, undeniable fact seemed to stop her short. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice different now. You really moved everything out in one day. Yes. And you have a new place already. You planned all this. Yes. Another pause. I never thought you would actually leave. There was something in her tone. Not quite respect, but perhaps the beginnings of it. A recognition that I wasn't the same pushover they'd always assumed me to be. The conversation ended shortly after with vague threats about discussions to come and decisions to be made. I hung up, feeling drained but strangely peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I had drawn a line and held it, despite the emotional manipulation and guilt trips that had always worked in the past. Later that evening, I received a surprising text from my father. The apartment looks different, empty. I had forgotten what it looked like before you moved in. We will talk more tomorrow. It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was an acknowledgement. And for now that was enough. Resolution and reflection. In the weeks that followed my dramatic departure, I adjusted to life in my new apartment. The space was indeed much smaller, requiring creative organization and some difficult decisions about which possessions to keep. My king-sized bed dominated the bedroom, leaving barely enough space to walk around it. My beloved sectional sofa had to be split into its component pieces to fit the living area. My dining table now served double duty as a desk and eating surface. Yet, despite the constraints, there was a lightness to my new home that had nothing to do with square footage. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I felt truly in control of my space and my life. Every object was exactly where I wanted it. Every decision, from when to do laundry to what temperature to set the thermostat, was mine alone. The peace that came with this autonomy was worth far more than the extra space I had left behind. I introduced myself to my neighbors, something I had never bothered to do in my previous building. To my delight, the woman across the hall was a graphic designer who worked from home, and invited me to join her for coffee on our shared rooftop garden. The older gentleman next door offered to water my plants when I traveled for work. Gradually, I built a small community in my new building, creating connections that felt genuine and supportive. Meanwhile, the situation with my family evolved in unexpected ways. Stephanie, faced with an empty apartment and no one to cater to her needs, found herself forced to make changes. According to my mother's reluctant updates, she had taken a part-time job at a local boutique, similar to her previous position. It was not much, but it was a start toward financial independence. My parents, after the initial shock and anger subsided, seemed to be going through a period of reflection. My father particularly appeared to be reconsidering his role in enabling Stephanie's dependence. During a brief phone conversation 2 weeks after my move, he asked questions about my new place without the judgment I had expected. "Are you managing okay with the budget?" he inquired, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes," I replied honestly. "It is tighter than before, but I am making it work. The location is actually better for my commute, which saves on transportation costs." "That's good," he said awkwardly. "Your mother and I have been talking about Stephanie, about some patterns we might have encouraged over the years." It was as close to an acknowledgement of their favoritism as I had ever heard. And while it was not an apology, it felt like progress. My relationship with my mother remained strained. She continued to see my actions as a betrayal of family loyalty, rather than a necessary step toward healthy boundaries. Our conversations were short and superficial, focusing on weather and work rather than the emotional elephant in the room. Stephanie, surprisingly, was the first to reach out in a meaningful way. A month after my departure, she texted asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what she wanted, but determined to maintain my boundaries. We met at a neutral cafe halfway between our respective homes. She looked different somehow, with less makeup and simpler clothes than her usual stylish outfits. "So," she said after we had ordered our drinks, "your new place is good?" "It is," I confirmed. "Different but good." She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin. "I didn't think you would really leave. None of us did." "I know it was kind of badass actually," she admitted with a small smile. The look on Dad's face when we walked into that empty apartment. I wish I had taken a picture. Despite myself, I laughed. "It wasn't about revenge, you know." "I know that now." She looked down at her coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about all of it. About how I've always expected people to take care of me. How I never really had to face consequences because someone always bailed me out. When you left, it was like suddenly I had to figure things out. Mom and Dad brought over an air mattress, but it was uncomfortable and I hated it. So I got a job to buy my own bed. And once I started working again, I realized I actually like having my own money, not having to ask for everything." "That's great, Steph," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "I'm still staying at the apartment," she added quickly. "But I'm paying rent now. Not much, but something. And I'm looking for a roommate situation for when the lease ends." We talked for nearly 2 hours, longer than we had spoken in years. For the first time, it felt like a conversation between equals rather than the familiar dynamic of her taking and me giving. As we parted, she hugged me awkwardly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for being such a terrible sister." "You weren't terrible," I corrected her. "We just had unhealthy patterns, all of us." The healing process with my family continued slowly over the following months. There were setbacks and difficult conversations, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. My mother still occasionally tried to make me feel guilty for abandoning Stephanie. My father still sometimes slipped into his authoritative role, dispensing unwanted advice about my finances or career. But something fundamental had changed. They could no longer assume my compliance or take my support for granted. Each interaction required mutual respect, or it simply did not happen. I declined invitations that felt like obligations and accepted only those that felt genuine. I offered help when I could do so without resentment and said no when I could not. 6 months after my move, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' house. The atmosphere was different, tentative but not unpleasant. Stephanie brought a dessert she had baked herself. I brought a bottle of wine I could genuinely afford. My father carved the turkey with less ceremony than usual, and my mother asked about my new neighbors with what seemed like genuine interest. As we ate, I looked around the table at these people who had shaped me in both positive and negative ways. I felt neither the resentment that had driven me away, nor the desperate need for approval that had kept me compliant for so long. Instead, I felt a calm acceptance, a recognition that we were all flawed individuals doing our best with the emotional tools we had. The greatest lesson I learned through this experience was not about furniture or apartments or even money. It was about the difference between love and enabling, between generosity and being taken advantage of. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to set clear boundaries and hold them firm, even when it is painful. I also discovered the value of true independence, not just financial but emotional. The security of knowing I could stand on my own, make difficult decisions, and navigate their consequences gave me a confidence that permeated every aspect of my life. My work improved, my friendships deepened, and my sense of self strengthened. Today, 1 year after that dramatic moving day, I sit in my small but cherished apartment, surrounded by the same furniture that once filled a larger space, but now feels perfectly right for where I am. I have added new pieces chosen specifically for this home, and let go of others that no longer served me. In many ways, that is what the entire experience taught me about life. We hold on to relationships, patterns, and expectations that once fit, but may have become uncomfortable or constraining. Having the courage to assess what truly serves us, to keep what nurtures our growth, and release what restricts, it is perhaps the most important skill we can develop. Conclusion: if you've ever found yourself in a situation where your kindness was mistaken for weakness, where your boundaries were repeatedly crossed, or where you felt trapped by others' expectations, know that you have the right and the power to change that dynamic. It may not be easy and it may not happen overnight, but taking that first step toward honoring your own needs can transform not just your life, but the lives of those around you in ways you might never expect. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.